7. The inspector began to unpack. He found no interesting clothes. He unbundled his shirts and pyjamas and piled them in a twisty heap on the bedspread. Anna watched. He was now irritated with her. He wouldn't mind her towards midnight, but not the middle end of the afternoon. Thank you. Sex did not assist murder investigations. He felt she was urging him to remove her dress. She wanted to uncoil from her panties, ping her bra, and then perform the rite of spring, without the assistance of Stravinsky. While he shoved his nylon socks and string underwear in the first drawer he found, Anna unpacked his wall sculptures. She fingered the chisels and then whooped out, "Marvellous!" as she discovered 3 completed sculptures. A white wood scorpion, redwood snake, and a yellow dragon. She stroked them intimately. Her fingers searched out the artistry. She liked the artist in him more and more. Her bra felt heavy under the sway of her breasts. Gently slipping her left hand into the top of her dress, she eased the weight and slightly changed the tight position of the bra cup. Because her bust was overripe, she often discovered red semicircles below her breasts, where the bra had cut into her body. Just thinking about herself naked excited her. She wasn't just fond of herself, she was in love. Hanlin observed all this, as she intended he should. He decided to apply the 4th degree. "Anna, what do you know about your illustrious squire?" "Oh, not much. But it is rumoured that Creedy had some kind of hold on him. Financially, I suspect. I suppose you didn't know that Creedy now lives in the squire's manor. Has for the last 6 years. And the poor old squire, who is a honey, has to live in a cottage east of the woods. A couple of fields away, that is. These sculptures are really super, and I mean that." "Yes, I think I'll visit our squire. This is a very scintillating village, you know. Examined from a great distance, preferably London. I must admit I love the way the villagers have taken to me, right to the heart. Such hospitality, and oh, so helpful. Do you know, I haven't had one straight answer to one straight question. It's all been carefully parcelled up with secrets and suspicion. Why? Unless they have something to hide. That is quietly corrupting the law. What a galaxy of planets we have here. There's Jippo, the sadist, Squire Fenn, the fluter, Lawrence Creedy, the actor, the children, the Indians, your father, the peacemaker, your mother, the danger, and you. What in the name of indiscretion are you? The evening corrupter, the brazier loosener, the phallus teaser. It's endless. Oh, and I forgot the Reverend White, the God Killer. I will return." He moved toward the door. She stopped him. "You suffer from too much police sophistication, David. My lamb. People are never so complex, or so simple. They are just lovely people, as you'll see, if you pull back your eyelids. Oh, but you are a beautiful carver." David ignored this, picked up his half-finished paper knife and a chisel, and left the house. It took 20 minutes to reach the squire's cottage, having been misled by one of the twins and the cat butcher. There was a definite subconscious hysteria in every villager he had met so far. It was too much to believe that everyone was suffering from guilt. Or was it? Since he had arrived, he had acquired no definite proof of anything. Simply tremors. Blood tremors. Why, for instance, was the priest so verbose and so positive in avoiding the police? Then there's the children brought up in this climate of distrust. Their minds already cankered, the police image to them was equivalent to Satan. But what? And here was the problem. But what did Satan mean to them? Was he the devil, or had they turned him into God? Dark and light are only of the mind, they are interchangeable. It is a matter of opinion, whether the dun yellow of twilight is the growing of the dark, or simply the dying of the light. To the children, maybe, the light interferes with the dark. Perhaps the villagers have trained themselves and their children to love the dark. Have they discovered the sexual release of fear? And do they need the night to cover them? What were they doing in the loft before I went in? Questions sprouted in the inspector's head. He paused outside the flaking garden gate of the squire's cottage. Strange flute notes crept out of the cottage. They were discordant, pursuing something beyond music. The notes were haunting, hunting something in the inspector. They cut through all the musical rhythms he could remember. He found he wanted to dance. Not exactly dance, but lift one foot after the other. Slowly. The sequence of sound seemed to limpet all the notes together until it had concentrated into a howl. That's it. That. It was an experiment in sound. In evil? A snort of pain assisted the music. The inspector listened for some time to the counterpoint before realizing the snorting came from a white horse in the field next to the cottage. It was neighing in fear, battering itself against a hawthorn hedge and collecting thorns in its flanks. Perspiration skipped from its neck onto the buttercups. Slowly the screech subsided. The notes reformed into honey in the late summer. The horse stopped thrashing itself against the briars. Two girlish ribbons of blood tied themselves on the horse's white belly. The thorns had done their work. The blood was coming. The inspector wanted to go into the field and mop the blood with his handkerchief, but he was very sensitive about being stamped to death. The horse relaxed under the summer sounds. It slowly knelt down, Japanese white against English green. Then, with a tired neigh, it unbuckled its beauty and lay still. The music had become music, gentle, so gentle. The inspector had to strain to catch the subtlety of the note patterns, but he broke it by forcing his hypnotized fingers to the latch on the garden gate. Pressing the heel of his thumb down sharply, he clicked the gate open. Leaning against his Jacobean fireplace, the squire heard the click and instructed his flute to silence. This cottage had a very low cream-yellow ceiling veined with black beams, like giant spiders' legs. The squire, who was nearly 6 foot, smoothed his hair, then he ducked his head between the beams and looked through a gash in the curtains. As soon as he saw the inspector strolling up the path, he sucked the flute to his lips and began to pipe a nursery rhyme. He missed most of the notes out. It was like a child learning the instrument. An unmusical child. In fact, he missed out more notes of Old King Cole than there were notes in the tune. He was disturbed by the intrusion. The door knocker clattered twice. The squire went into the dwarf hall and let the inspector in. His white hair was no longer parted down the centre with such military precision. There was something distrait about his appearance, as if he had been dancing, or worse. A whisper of sweat slid down his jugular vein. He no longer wore his cravat, and his top shirt button was missing. The thread was ripped away from the shirt, as though he had tugged open his collar violently. In the corner of the hall, David noticed an expensive modern steel bow and a quiver of aluminium arrows. He remembered that Jippo's bow was steel and the arrows aluminium. Casually, he brushed his fingers over the metal. The bow was strung. It had been used recently. The inspector was sure of this. "Nice bow, Inspector? Children must have left it behind. You know how forgetful they are. Always taken a keen interest in 'em. You were doing some very strange fluting, Squire, if you don't mind me saying so." "Say so, indeed, sir, for I was indeed, sir, very strange. I'm only a beginner, do you see? Like in so many things, one has to begin to die from the start. Disturbing thought, don't you think? Soon as you're born, you begin to die. My piping's just the same. Seems to die on me before it's been born, which presents certain chromatic problems, as I'm sure you can see. Come and see my garden. Too fair a day to stifle indoors." The squire led the inspector through the front room to the kitchen. They practically crawled on all fours as the roof seemed to meet the mouse holes, which were planned symmetrically round the skirting board. The kitchen was piled with empty bottles of claret and second-best hock. The sink was a junkyard of marmalade plates, eggy saucers, bacon rind and chicken bones. The squire is an organised man with a deep regard for cleanliness, thought David. The squire opened the back door onto the garden. A long winding path led through fresh beds of roses. A shudder of petals, scarlet and yellow flames in the late afternoon sun, rows upon rows uncurling to the furnace in the sky, and the furnace was slowly dying. It was the prologue to the witching time. The centuries of dead felt calmer, knowing the seasons of ghosts were coming. The perfection of darkness was only a few hours away. "Talking of your fluting, Squire, I don't think you played so badly at all. I stood outside the gate and listened for a good 10 minutes. It was experimental, hypnotic, and a little disturbing, but I wouldn't have said bad. The horse over there, you know, broke into a sweat as you played." The white horse in the field saw the squire, whinnied, and galloped in a sharp circle. "He doesn't seem to like you, does he, Squire?" The squire fondled the secret places of a rose. He uncurled the petals to reveal the nude centre. "Perhaps it's you he doesn't like, Inspector. Though I must admit it's surprising what bad Stravinsky can do. So much easier to be bad avant-garde than good anything, don't you think?" The inspector knew he was lying about the flute and the bow and arrow, but was clueless as to why. Clueless. What was the problem? There were clues all right, but nothing to relate them to. "Inspector, I can give you a poor man Stravinsky recital any time, now if you like." He said this, fingering his flute in one hand and a rose in the other. "No, thank you, Squire. By the way, it's very funny you should offer to show me your garden, for that's one of the reasons I came. Could I see your herb patch?" "Course, Inspector. Delighted to find the police produce horticulturalists as well as post-mortemists." They passed the roses and the giant sunflowers. Next came cabbages and a fleck of red in the runner beans. The earth was thick brown, nearly black, very fertile. At the bottom of the long garden, the smell of half-ripe apples softened the cabbage tang. 5 apple trees stapled their leaves on the skycloth, and 1 pear tree, without a single pear, shouldered arms and saluted the sun. Just this side of the orchard they reached the herb patch. The inspector knelt down and inspected the plants. Bruised mint, rosemary and parsley. With the squire's permission, David ripped off a curled sprig of parsley and chewed it appreciatively. The aromatic green was refreshing to his palate. Whilst he was chewing, he found what he was looking for. A small bed of garlic flowers, hidden underneath a mist of honeysuckle. There were other herbs beside the garlic, whose names he couldn't remember, but he knew they were uncommon. He wondered why the squire grew them. The squire observed the inspector's interest flare up, but merely remarked, "Vast goodness in earth, Inspector. If only we could harvest it. Surprising the amount of plants and things that are waiting for their right uses, eh?" "Squire, I think you're being deliberately obtuse. You know perfectly well that Diane Spark was found dead, clutching a spray of garlic. Very few gardens bother to grow it, but you have. Why? Did you give Diane the flowers last Sunday morning? Were you, in fact, one of the last people to see her alive?" "No! I knew the girl, true. Sometimes spoke to her on my visits to Creedy. She often went with the other children to his afternoon game sessions, do you know? Before you ask me, I have no idea what his games entail. As for the garlic flowers, she could have got them anywhere. Creedy has some in his garden. Reverend White has a few. Anyone could have. Admittedly, she couldn't have got them from her own garden. She hasn't got a garden." The inspector interrupted this unhelpful flow. "You realize the witchcraft implications of this garlic, of this whole murder? For it is murder." "What are you implying, Mr. Hanlin?" "Don't play the monkey with me, sir. You know as well as I do that garlic flowers are a powerful ingredient of witchcraft. I'm not suggesting that the mumbo-jumbo of witchcraft itself is dangerous, but the implications are. This village is sweating with fear, and I know I'm telling you nothing new, but perhaps you could tell me a thing or two. For example, why was Diane Spark clutching a sprig of garlic? Why did I find garlic on a grave this morning? Why was there garlic on the church altar? Why was there garlic on the giant oak tree, plus 2 monkeys' heads and a couple of bats' wings? Why?" The squire tried to restrain a mildewed smile, but could not, so gave it full scope. "Probably because someone likes garlic, bats' wings and monkeys' heads. Oh, come, Inspector. You've been over-reading Bram Stoker. What? Got Dracula's on the brain? Simply someone's sense of humour, that's all." "You can say that again," retorted the inspector, swallowing the parsley. "I will. Simply someone's sense of humour, that's all. Probably Jippo. He's our private rebel with no hint of a cause, mixed up in his head with Freudian sex symbols. Garlic flowers are a different matter. Like other herbs, they're cotton wool for our sanity. We dab our wounds with natural things like garlic to cure us. Of course, I'm talking of spiritual wounds, do you know? Must understand, in a village like this, ordinary things appear to be extraordinary. Only to the outsider, though. Only to you, Inspector. Everyone here is healthy, engrossed in living. It's only strange to an outsider." The inspector selected another frond of parsley and articulated between chews. "Is occult murder healthy? Except to a pervert, Squire? Strip off Scotland Yard, Inspector. It's becoming routine, might almost say ritual. Listen and learn." The squire obviously enjoyed giving lectures, and today was no exception. A tatter of white sea mist shifted uneasily at the bottom of the garden. It clung to the barks of the apple trees. Temperature was certainly degrees cooler. The buttercup sun wanted to die. Hanlin could smell the sea. The shells on the beach, slicing over and over. The squire knifed into his thoughts. "Inspector, if you lived here, which you don't, you'd see what I mean. Here violence and hunger of beasts haunt our minds. On evenings like this, he indicated the waters of the sky with the sun's honeycomb beyond. Yes, on evenings like this, the beast snarls in our minds. So we grow flowers and herbs to calm the beast. We grow things, Inspector. Grow 'em! That's why we're rich in what we are, a hard existence. The earth's not easy. Do you follow my sea drift? Considering I suggest occult murder, no, I don't. More fool you then. We grow things. We don't kill things, that's my point. Don't arrange death. He is in a hurry as it is. That's what I mean. Please, please, Squire, do not try to draw me into your obtuse philosophy. I know guilt when I see it. I can smell it. It's as rank as a cat on heat. There's guilt written on every face I've seen in this village. Guilt. On your face too, Squire. It's like railway lines on your face. The Squire moved towards the house. Having passed his vegetable patch, he stepped onto the recently dug earth until he was looking into the face of a sunflower. He caressed the propeller-shaped petals, chrome and powdery to the fingers. With his right hand he removed a minute insect from the yellow centre of the flower. The flower's pad was like a living cushion. It seemed to press against the pads of his fingers. It did not kill the insect, but brought it for the inspector's inspection. It was a green fly, a delicate turmoil of spindle grass and perspex wings. The Squire held it in such a way that it was able to perform acrobatics between his fingertips. We villagers are much like this green fly, Inspector. We plunder the beauty of the earth by planting and weeding and sweating a lot. Fortunately, some of the beauty rubs off on our hands and faces. We're allowed to glory in it. I mean this. And the guilt you think you see is only fear that an outsider like you, Inspector Hanlin, will destroy our peace of mind, our secrets. Sounds pretentious. Many things that are facts sound pretentious. If you gave yourself up to the earth for the rest of your life, perhaps you'd find our peace. But you wouldn't dare. Anyway, it's too late for you. You irritate us. Go away. The Squire placed the green fly on a crack in the paving stones. Suddenly, a young rust-coloured soldier ant hunched his way out of the dark between the stones. He anchored his eyes on the green fly and creaked forward to attack. His mandibles clashed silently. With a hysterical zigzag movement, he caught the green fly with his pincers. The green fly screamed. The Squire heard it scream. The inspector hardly noticed the insects at all. In fact, he nearly trod on them. The Squire squatted on his haunches and delivered a sharp jab with the spade edge of his hand on the inspector's ankle. David was taken by surprise and nearly punched his attacker until he saw the reason. I'm sorry, Squire, so sorry, I didn't see. The Squire was oblivious to his apology. Quickly he removed the green fly from the crab jaws of the ant and returned it to the sunflower. I forgot. Ant owns asphalt. That's where outsiders belong. Only green things inherit the earth, eh? David changed his tune. Where were you at the time of Deanne Sparks' death, Squire? On my way to church, Inspector. Religion has its place. All religions. The Squire grinned at the inspector, then turned back to the herb patch and gathered a bunch of garlic flowers. All religions, Squire? Does that include witchcraft? Satanism? Satanic rites? Ritual? Well, come on, answer me. Did you say something, Inspector? I'll have you inside if I could, evading the law. But you can't. The Squire stroked the bunch of flowers in his hand. David tried a different tack. I imagine it hurt you, Squire, when Lawrence Creedy bought your manor. He has you under his thumb, hasn't he? You're frightened of him. Why? For the first time, the squire was disturbed, only fractionally, but disturbed. Nevertheless, he clamped a negative visor over his face. "Why, squire?" "All right, I'll find out. If not from you, from the others. I have my own way of making people talk, and until someone does talk, I will haunt this village. All your experiments, musical and otherwise, will blow up in your faces. I'm ruthless if I have to be, and I don't like it." The squire handed the inspector the flowers. "Take these to Anna, Inspector. She likes scarlet flowers. Didn't bring you home for nothing, you know. Naughty big girl has a very healthy appetite for flowers and things." The inspector realised, short of a warrant or violence, the interview was over. The squire took out his flute and let a soft scream curve through the late afternoon. David had come to another precipice, and the ant hunched into the dark.